everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking to Deevo Tindall. Deevo, it's great to connect with you. I'm looking forward to talking about where branding meets creativity, amplifying your brand's connection. You're a creative agency, a branding agency, a content agency. Some of my favorite things to talk about, which is content. And I think it's one of the things that people are actually holds people back from being in social media, because the content creation seems too overwhelming to take the first step. So we're gonna dive into that. But as a business coach, Deevo, I work with people all over the globe who are successful but stuck. I get them unstuck. And so what would be an area that you think people are stuck when it comes to content creation, and how do you get them unstuck?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, John. Excited to be here. Really, there's a couple of key pieces that I see, and one of them you just touched on. And the first one was the gap that I filled with Fusion Creative. It's why I launched the business. So for almost 20 years, I've owned Fusion Photography, which is a traditional photography agency here in Charlotte. And a lot of the clients I was working with were business coaches, entrepreneurs, small businesses. And I was creating content for them, video, photography, graphic design, etc. And I would turn these repositories of imagery and video over to them. And then I would notice, like, because I follow them on social media and their website and stuff, and I would check in and see that they weren't doing anything with this content. At first, I thought, I was like, okay, am I delusional about myself? Because these look like pretty badass photos and videos, but nobody's doing anything with them. So I started making phone calls and just sort of routine check-ins. And by and large, the trend that I saw is that we have all these things. We love them, but we don't know what to do with them. Like, nobody understood. I don't want to be on social media. I feel stupid showing up on social media. I have imposter syndrome, like all these different reasons, which it sounds like you hear all the time. And so I'm like, there's an obvious gap here. And then I noticed another thing is that marketing and branding agencies were reaching out to me to create content for them. So I'm like, okay, there's two different pockets that I can fill a solution for, but I'm not currently doing them in a sort of like replicable business model. And so I set out to create Fusion Creative to sort of fill those voids. And so that was the first piece. And then the second piece I was noticing is that a lot of the clients that I was working with were not very clear and succinct on their value proposition. Exactly what problem are they solving for their ideal client? And because they were unclear on that, they weren't speaking to their ideal client. And so what we did is we crafted this whole project portfolio on how we can work with clients on a strategic level and a holistic level to take them from cradle to grave, content creation, strategy, and then amplifying that message to the right audience.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, I'm a big believer. I love creating content. I create a lot of content. But what I find is a lot of people have a really difficult time creating it. So think community, it's really important. If you're having trouble creating it, a lot of times it's kind of probably in front of you. You just need somebody like a Deevo to kind of guide you on how to do it, what to do, and how to maximize it. And like you said, amplify it. So thanks for that, Deevo. Let's talk about creativity. Right. My first question when it comes to creativity, as somebody who's in the space with Fusion brands, what is one way somebody can tap into their own creativity? I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm not creative enough, or I'm not creative at all, or this and the other. But really, I think everybody has some level of creativity within them, but they can't necessarily always tap into it. How do they tap into it?
Well, I agree with you. I think everybody has an inherent creative stream somewhere in them. They just haven't learned how to tap into it yet, and they're not utilizing. It's just like anything else. It's muscle memory, right? And so, if you're not exercising or eating properly, you're going to sort of start to become rotund and a little bit obese and all those things. But you can certainly lose that weight over time if you implement some sort of a practice. And so, for us, what we do, because a lot of the content creation that involves social media also involves the client having to create stuff so that we can take that and manage it for them, right? And so what we do is we give them a structured plan, and that's a great way to start out with, is a structured plan that's backed by a strategy that's in alignment with your ultimate business goals. And so if you have structure and you have a plan, people are more inclined to follow that because they have clear instructions on what to do. I need you to create a video today talking about the meeting you just had, or I need you to do an advanced piece of content around the keynote that you have coming up, or I need you to create a small bullet points of the client that you met with today that you help solve problems with. And so what happens is you get them in sort of this routine, this habitual routine that's disciplined and organized and structured and strategically aligned with what they're trying to do with their business. And you literally give them assignments. And what happens is, just like anything else, you start training your brain, you start training your mind, you develop this muscle memory, you're habitually creating stuff, you start gaining confidence in it, you start realizing, whoa, I actually do have a little bit of thought seed and value to offer to the world. I might have imposter syndrome, but when you start seeing all these different elements come to life cohesively and symbiotically on your social, on your website, you sort of get to step back and reflect and be like, you know what, I kind of am the man, I kind of am the woman, I understand what's going on here. So that's the first approach we take.
Right. I love it. It's so interesting to me too, because I think branding is so hard for sometimes people to define, right? And so sometimes what I think it's because it's hard to define, it's hard to understand what the ROI is, or that it really is an investment and not an expense. I think sometimes people go right to the expense level of it and not the investment piece of it. So I want to do kind of a mini business course on why branding is an investment in you and your business, right? And so when you look at it, what is number one?
I think, first of all, what you just said is really spot on. You're speaking my language here. I think for people to understand branding, it's a very nebulous term, and everybody jumps straight into marketing because they understand sort of this linear relationship with ROI and sort of you spend money to make money type of concept. But where they lose focus is that branding and marketing go hand in hand, and you need both of them in order to organize. So I always tell my clients, first of all, I organize those two distinct thoughts and how they intersect. Branding is sort of your messaging. It's everything that you are, what you believe in, your philosophies, your missions, your values. It's sort of like, it's like the cathartic thought seed of your company. And then the marketing piece is how you're going to share that message with a very specific audience. So first of all, I break that down. But in terms of branding and sort of getting through that qualifying nebulous nature of it, I always try to make people understand that this is literally, you are a walking billboard, especially in today's digital marketplace. You are a walking billboard. Everything you say, the way you answer the phone, your voice message, if you have wrapping around your car, your billboard signs, it's literally everything. And it's not just you. If you have employees or contractors, you need to make sure that they're also eating, breathing, and drinking the Kool-Aid, so that every single time a customer interacts with you in their customer journey, they're getting a consistent message about what you stand for, who you are, why you do it, and most importantly, what's the problem you're solving for them. So that's the real critical pieces. And in order to understand the branding, we take all of our clients through this really rigorous branding discovery process so that they can understand who they are specifically. So, one of the things I always use is, like, it's difficult for us to read our own label because we're stuck inside our jar. And so we're the jar readers from the outside, so they can get that introspective look at who they really are.
I love that. So just to kind of summarize it, it's kind of one, understanding the difference between branding and marketing them and doing them together. Two, understanding the pain. Three, the discovery. And through all of it, it's really tightening up your message. There's a great book, Deevo. I don't know if you've read it. It's my favorite book I read last year. It's called Smart Brevity. You would love it. Have you read it?
I use it all the time, man. It's brilliant.
The greatest book ever written, right? That and Atomic Habits, I think. And I'm not saying this to impress anyone, but I've read so many books, but those two books are two books I wish I wrote, because it's really how I think, and it was able to define so many things and break things down. But smart brevity is key. So thank you for that. So let's talk about.
That's so funny you said that. I'm literally like walking through this book with a client right now, trying to explain to her, you talk too much, man. We need to slow this down.
It's
simple
so
sentences.
Brilliant. The book is absolutely brilliant. All right, let's talk a little bit about timing, because to me, marketing and branding is something you never stop doing. You talked about a billboard. Everybody's a walking billboard. I agree with that. The obstacle is people usually do billboards for a short amount of time. And they get traffic counts and yada, yada, yada. I don't even know if billboards work. I don't know to the extent. I can't say positively or negatively, but I do know that marketing and branding is a never ending journey. There's no 3-month window or 2 months to do it. And so talk a little bit about kind of, the long-term nature and the delayed gratification of it.
Well, I think people, it's interesting. It's an interesting question, and it's a very interesting disposition because we live in this society now where we have these phones and we're in this instant gratification 24/7. We have information at our fingertips 24/7. And you mentioned smart brevity. There's a chapter in there they talk about where we're literally bombarded 24/7 with information. So how as business owners or entrepreneurs or whatever we are doing that we're trying to get someone to buy our product, how do we cut through that noise in a sea of people? And so for me, really, it all starts with having a strategy and making very, very certain and clear on what you do, and then be able to talk about that message. In terms of the timing and the marketing of it, you're spot on. It's a never-ending journey, and it's an iterative journey. And so you have to be flexible and adaptive and read your data and understand how your audience is responding to you and be able to make shifts in that strategy. So your brand message, it might be clear to you today, but as the market evolves and as your business grows and people start reacting differently and more people come online doing the exact same thing you're doing, you have to consistently be able to stand out from them and show your audience what makes you unique, because people connect with you on an emotional level. They're not just necessarily buying your product. They're buying what's the resonant emotional factor that intersects the two of us, and that makes me want to work with you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I want to do a little mini business life course with you. You have a podcast called Unlearn Everything. I love it. It reminds me a little bit of Jason Fried Rework. I don't know if I had him on my podcast. I met him at an event, and his books are great, and he's really kind of reteaching a lot. So as kind of his smart brevity, and I think a lot of people right now are trying to unlearn things, right? We all have kind of these voices that aren't our voices. I was at one of my holistic doctors this morning, and he said a lot of times you share things that you're stressed about that don't even really belong to you, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what are three things, right? We're kind of moving a little away from business, a little to life, even though I think they morph. What are three things that people in their life need to unlearn to be more productive, effective, efficient, and fulfilled in their business? What's number one?
I think number one is my personal mantra. We always have a choice in how we respond to everything, literally everything. And we can't control. There are uncontrollable dynamics that we have literally zero control over, and we need to just let those go. They are going to do what they're going to do, and you have a choice in how you respond to them. Yeah. That would be my first one. I think the second one.
I'll say one thing before we go to number two. I'll say one thing. We have a choice, but we also, to get to that choice, I think we have to figure out how to get back to our own center so we can actually get to the point where we can actually make that choice and be conscious that we're in our own selves when we're making that choice, that the voice is coming from our gut and our heart, not necessarily our head of what our grandfather said or something, right? It's really kind of tuning in, I think. What's number two?
I like that addition. I think number two is developing self-awareness around the role you play in the world. And being very clear on the value that you add, and get over your imposter syndrome, get over the fact that everyone else is doing something. There's something unique about you. There's some quality or trait that you possess. I believe that everybody has some sort of a purpose, and it's our job to figure that out. And number three, be unique, man. That everyone else is taken. There's only one of you. And whatever that is, if that means you want to work in the corporate world, work in the corporate world, but find a pathway that is salient and resonant with you, and stop trying to be like everyone else, because there's everyone looks the same. We're all just a bunch of clones. So how do you figure out how to stand out and share your unique version of the world with the people that care about you most?
Yeah. Your perspective, your questions, your everything. And I agree with you. Understanding kind of that unique ability is so important for yourself. And sometimes it's hard to find. So you need, somebody like yourself, somebody like me to help bring it out. Not that it has to be you or me, but it's sometimes it's so hidden in plain sight and so obvious to everybody else, but not to you. So I think community, you want, reach out and talk to people if you can't figure it out. All right. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So
can I say one piece for that? That's a strong fourth, or in the top three, is community over competition as well. I think what you just said is really strong, being able to surround yourself with a group of people, whether it's your peers or your friends or your partners or whatever, that will help make you a stronger version of yourself is really critical. And stop trying to like, I just want to operate in a silo because I don't want anybody else to steal my secret sauce. And it's just like, that's not how life works.
Yeah. Collaboration and community are key. And, there's a lot you can do on your own, but there's a lot of great things that come out of collaboration as well. Mm-hmm. When it comes to your business, rewind for me, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, et cetera. Who was a mentor that kind of laid some type of advice to you that you didn't have to unlearn, right? That still sticks with you, that has helped you, kind of do what you're doing today and bring you that extra, frequency and vibration you need to kind of, keep your edge.
I don't have any one particular person in mind. I think it's a large group of people. I got divorced roughly 13 years ago, and that was sort of a renaissance moment for me in my life. I realized after the divorce, and I've had pretty much success most of my life. Played college football, always been sort of in a leadership capacity financially. I've always sort of done pretty well in everything I did. I worked in the corporate world for 15 years right out of college. But I followed the routine that I'm now not following. I'm literally the antithesis of what I was 13 years ago. And so if there were any particular mentors for me, it's been a bevy of works. It's been literature that I got turned back onto. It's been artists that I've been turned back onto. It's just, I've chosen over the last 13 years to make a very conscious and deliberate effort to surround myself with quality people that make me a better human. I've joined mastermind groups. I now launched my own mastermind group. So I've actually handpicked the people that are in the group, from the networking groups that I'm joining, to the literature that I'm reading, to the TV that I consume or lack thereof. All of it has been mentors. All of it has been a perpetual process of unlearning the dogma that I was learning for the first 30 years of my life, and now unlearning and relearning. So there isn't any one particular person. It's just been a lot of different people. That
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. It's kind of like surrendering and just like allowing the universe, the people, the circumstances to kind of, flow by you, flow through you, etc. I love that.
What's crazy, John, is that, we're not taught any of those things. We're not taught spiritual development. We're not taught critical thinking. We're actually suppressed in the classroom to become, automatons that just go straight from one row of militarized seats to the next and then onto a cubicle for the rest of our life. And so all of those inherent capabilities and intuition and all the ideation and critical thinking that we actually possess inherently, it's like part of our God-given code. Those are all suppressed. And so it's our job to sort of figure out how to unrepress those and sort of step into our true power.
Yeah. I love that. It's for those reasons. I'm a business coach. I have my own coaching company. I work with, solopreneurs to Fortune companies all over the globe. But I also just launched a second company, which is a coaching platform for just people in their 20s. It's called Launch 3. And it's, helping them build their life, career, and their brand. I'd love to have you on as a guest speaker. I'll send you some information on it. We'll talk about it after we're done. But it's for that reason. It's to give them the tools that they need that I don't either they're not getting or paying attention to it in their formative years. So I'll tell you more about that. It's for those who are interested, launch-3.com. All right, let's do.
It's an interesting dichotomy. Sorry to interrupt, but it's an interesting dichotomy, that whole space, because I was having this conversation yesterday with the podcast host I was on. You sort of look back at your life and you're like, had I not made those mistakes in the first place, would I be at the position that I am now to sort of have that awareness around it? So it's almost like a catch-22. Do people need to go and what's that fine line, the balance between educating them so they know before they make the mistakes, or letting them make the mistakes and then having the self-awareness after the fact? I always struggle with that. I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that at another time, because I don't have time to really get into it right now.
We're like rapid fire through this.
Cool. Yeah. Favorite book that's had the biggest impact on you?
Man, I got to say Seth Godin, his early work, This Is Marketing. I love anything that Seth Godin put out. I'm really digging Smart Brevity, but I would say probably one of my favorite authors right now is Covey. I'm on anything on leadership. I love what Covey has to say. I don't know. I'm reading a really cool book right now called Frequency by Penny Pierce, and it's all about how we can tap into our natural energy that we're sort of like we're repressing because we're afraid of stepping into our power. But yeah, I don't know. Probably in terms of business, Seth Godin. Oh, it's called Frequency by Penny Pierce.
By Penny Pierce. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's all about your energy and like how you work with energy and that sort of stuff. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, I love it. My wife is an energy healer.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. That's great. I just want to say this real quickly. One of my favorite Seth Godin books is one of his originals was Permission Marketing, which was way ahead of its time. That book,
way ahead of its time. He's gotten watered down in the last few years for his last few books. I'm not really sure what's happened, but he's shifted. I'm not sure if he's just sort of like putting out things to put things out, but his early work is like should be a must read for any entrepreneur.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of like, I agree. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
I think really honestly is treat people with respect and kindness, because everything that we see in our outside world is a reflection of our inner engineering. And if we're receiving bad feedback from people, or we're receiving bad experiences, it's because something internally we have not organized and worked on ourselves to optimize.
Yeah, well said. Finish this sentence. Last question. One thing everybody can do to tap into their creativity and start their next level of marketing and branding is
spend some quiet time with yourself.
Amen to that. Amen to that. That's a whole
daily.
Yeah. Amen. Deevo, this has been great. I've loved this talk. It's been great. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are and how they can connect with you.
Anybody who is looking to connect with their right audience, and I actually work with a lot of business coaches, but early entrepreneurs, people who have some money that they've put aside for marketing and branding and realize the importance of having clarity on that brand message, small business owners, anyone who's looking to craft a strategic solution that is in alignment with their ideal business vision, and then we help them create content around that, support that with management of that, and amplifying that message so that a larger group of people can connect with them.
It's great. And they can reach you at fusioncreativebranding.com.
Yes, sir.
Think community. I love this podcast. I get to talk to interesting people live every day at 12, and it breaks up my day and just kind of re-energizes me for the rest of my day. I love to extract at least one thing, and you've said so many great nuggets, Deevo. But one thing I'm just going to highlight is the importance of taking time every day by yourself, whether that's a walk in nature, meditation, breathing. Try it for 10 seconds or 1 minute at a time. It really is. It's a game changer to just slow down our nervous system and our minds, because that's where the best ideas come. You talk about frequency. I do a lot of studying and reading and researching, and I go to a lot of energy healers and holistic doctors and Buddhist monks and things of that nature. And it's so important to kind of understand your own frequency. I find that in my life, as does my wife, our children. And so the more you can, I think, tap into a frequency that you find in silence, it really, really goes a long, long way. So I appreciate you ending and sharing that. I think community, if you want to reach out to Deevo, reach out to him. If you want to reach out to me, johndwoskin.com. Deevo, stay on. Thanks, brother. This was great.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.